And is it something that is that, because you can argue any number of different things. You can argue the fact that, okay, was the intelligence that we acted upon right or wrong, or is it okay, or if it was right, how far does it go, and does this mean that we need to get boots on the ground? And for me, having been in the military for 20 years, this is something I take very seriously. Putting other people in harm's way is something where, as a commander, that was one of your worst fears. Is making a plan and putting together an operation, and then having to put other people into harm's way. That's something that weighs very heavily on all commanders. And so, I think that's one thing to look at. But it's looking at it. Is this based in? Is it constitutional? Is it based in the law? Is it based in the Constitution? Is there authority? And if you recall back, and if you haven't seen the prior special episodes that we had,
First one.
the first one back when we talked about Venezuela and the initial narco boats and intercepting the narco boats, and then the third one on actually going into Venezuela, we discussed the president's Article 2 powers and the War Powers Act and debated all of that. And, in looking at this action, again, whether you agree with it or not, this is a solid Article 2 power of the president. This was an identified threat that, whether or not you believe Joe Kent and that there was an assessment as far as there was a imminent threat or not, I'm not going to debate that issue. I'm not besmirching anyone, but with the intelligence that you see and the intelligence that you've had and it's been presented, it looks pretty obvious that there was an imminent threat in one way or the other. And so the president has the authority under his Article 2 powers to do this. And people are like, well, there hasn't been a declaration of war. This is an illegitimate war. Okay, note to self, there hasn't been a declared war since World War II. Every other act that we've had, and as we discussed in the prior special episodes, every other act that we've had since then has been some type of defensive action. And it's been initiated under the president's Article 2 powers. So Korea, Vietnam, Grenada, Gulf War I, Gulf War II, none of that was ever declared, except for when we finally had the declaration for the global war on terror, which even then was under an executive order. And there was no actual congressional order or declaration of war. So then you look at, okay, well, what are the War Powers Acts and what is it to require? Well, we are still, as far as I'm aware, still within this 60-day requirement for the president to report to Congress and 90 days for Congress to act. And by the way, Congress has already taken this issue up, and it was voted down. It was voted down in Congress as far as putting a stop to it. Now, whether or not that continues on, that remains to be seen. But this was already brought up by Congress, discussed in Congress, and voted down in Congress. So as such, this is now a legitimate Article 2 power act.